Since the signing of the Magna Carta, humanity has grappled with the delicate balance between the power of war and the force of economic ambition. That historic document did more than curb absolute authority. It planted the seeds of a legal framework that would, over centuries, underpin the evolution of modern economies and political systems. In the medieval world, the Magna Carta signified the beginning of a long journey toward accountability and restraint in governance. As nations emerged from feudalism and absolute rule, they learned that true stability required the establishment of principles that protected individual rights and fostered fair economic practices. Over the following centuries, Europe's quest for power and wealth led to a period marked by relentless competition among emerging nation-states. Ambitious empires set their sights on distant lands, driven by the lure of untapped resources and new markets. It was during this era that entities like the East India Company rose to prominence, embodying a hybrid of commercial enterprise and military might. This organization, sanctioned by its home governments, embarked on far-reaching expeditions that were as much about economic exploitation as they were about territorial conquest. Its ventures in Asia not only enriched its sponsors, but also redefined global trade networks, laying bare the intricate and often brutal links between commerce and armed conflict. The actions of such companies demonstrated that economic interests could drive military engagements, setting a precedent that would echo through history. The early 20th century brought even greater upheaval. World War I erupted as a result of a tangle of alliances, national ambitions, and technological innovations that transformed warfare into an industrial-scale enterprise. The carnage of the Great War forced nations to reconsider their approaches to both military engagement and economic management. Economies that had once thrived under the aegis of unchecked industrial expansion were now faced with the immense costs of prolonged conflict. The war disrupted traditional trade routes and shattered the economic stability that had been painstakingly built over previous decades. In the aftermath, countries struggled not only to rebuild their shattered infrastructures, but also to redefine the economic principles that would guide future peace. Barely had the world begun to recover from the ravages of the first global conflict when World War II plunged nations into an even more catastrophic struggle. This second conflict, with its staggering human and economic costs, underscored the interdependence of military might and economic resilience. In the ruins of once great cities and the despair of devastated economies, a collective determination emerged to forge a new order, one that would prevent the recurrence of such widespread destruction. Out of the chaos, international institutions were born, the most prominent being the United Nations. Established with the goal of fostering dialogue, mutual respect, and economic cooperation, the UN embodied the hope that nations could resolve disputes through negotiation rather than warfare. In the decades that followed, the United States emerged as a dominant global power, its economic and political influence growing rapidly in the post-war era. Yet even as America enjoyed unprecedented prosperity, its internal political discourse became increasingly divided. A long-standing conservative tradition, rooted in the principles of free enterprise, minimal government intervention, and individual responsibility, coexisted uneasily with a progressive movement that advocated for expansive social programs and greater economic regulation. This ideological split, which has deep historical roots, continues to shape American policy and its role on the world stage. During the administration of President Donald Trump, a doctrine of America First was vigorously promoted. This approach, characterized by unilateral decision-making and a robust assertion of national interests, aimed to reassert American sovereignty in a rapidly globalizing world. In particular, Trump's policies regarding the conflict between Russia and Ukraine sparked fierce debates both at home and abroad. His administration's reluctance to fully engage with multilateral institutions and traditional alliances was seen by supporters as a bold move to protect national interests. Yet critics argued that it undermined the cooperative frameworks necessary for global stability. Recent news headlines have linked the ensuing economic turbulence, not only in the form of market volatility, but also in a broader decline in investor confidence, to the fallout from these policies. As the Russia-Ukraine conflict continues to influence energy markets and global supply chains, many analysts contend that the residual effects of a more isolationist foreign policy have contributed to the downturn in American economic fortunes.